Traditionally in Boxcutter, you could perform a cut by just clicking and dragging and then releasing. You'll jump into the extrusion operation where the extrusion will attempt to follow your mouse cursor. This means that by moving it left to right, you're not going to see much movement except for it registering on the vertical. And this is a quite simple way to perform an extrusion. However, whenever you're looking at things head on, it does make things a little bit difficult. For example, right here, you see I'm unable to give any sort of depth to this shape, leaving me no choice but to just left click and perform a view extrude. Of course, I could draw the shape and then rotate the view and then of course adjust the depth, which is a traditional way that we've been working. However, underneath our behavior sprocket under input is an option for something called alternative extrude. And what this means is that instead of registering it the way it did previously, it now uses the amount of movement that you give it after drawing the shape in order to determine how far to cut through the shape. So this is nice and all. However, View Extrude has never supported Custom Cutter, which was a little bit limiting. And to show that in action, let's actually press D and switch over to Custom Cutter. And by looking at this face head on, we can draw a Boxcutter logo. And if I move it out, we see that View Extrude is able to work with custom and extrude just like it would with box. But notice that when I hold shift to try to get a one-to-one cut, that isn't actually supported. So I can't actually get a one-to-one cut with the Boxcutter logo. I am able to rotate my view, which will break me out of View Extrude. And then from there, by pressing shift, I can actually lock this state in a one-to-one form. And this is actually just too much work to have to drop out of a mode in order to just activate a behavior that should be solid across all our shapes. Just like I was discussing with auto depth, this is something we also want to solve with Custom Cutter and View Align. So let's go in and we just want to make sure auto depth is off, and under input we just want to turn on alternative extrude, and we'll just draw our box, and we see that now we're able to extrude based on the amount of movement that the mouse is making instead of the position of the mouse on the screen. So if you're a new user, this is something that could require some getting used to if you experiment with, but definitely has its possibilities for increased usability. For example, being able to cut to a depth from this particular angle is something that was previously an impossibility. However, now we're able to determine the amount of depth just by looking at the extrude amount and looking at it from a static head-on view. So if we press D and we switch over to custom, we'll draw custom just like before, and we can extrude all the way through just like we could before. However, if I hold shift, we see that we're able to view extrude and get a one-to-one result, which allows us to actually pause this at an adequate depth proper for the Boxcutter logo. So just letting you know that there's been some small changes whenever it comes to View Extrude. Even though it's something that not a lot of users are using, it's something that we still are in the process of trying to improve to become adequate enough to become a default. Another thing about it is that View Extrude also now supports dots. So if we pause it and we grab this dot, we can now hold shift while grabbing this extrude dot, even in this 2D state, left click, right click to pause it, and we see that we were able to pause it in a one-to-one state. So one-to-one with View Extrude not only supports shift inherently, as you saw with this cut, it also supports it whenever you're using a dot to modify the state, even in a 2D state, which will definitely come in handy in a pinch.